Okay, so the check fail synchro suite running is called again to make sure that synchro hasn't been launched at any time. The way that this installer works is for copying files is two steps. One, you set the output directory, and next you tell it what file is going to go out to the directory. So you have, like you can see here, this file, this OCX is residing in the, this is our source tree, and it's back three directories and in our main combined folder. And so this is telling it where to fetch the file, and this is telling it where it's going to put the file. So everything right now that any file that you see below the set out path command is going to that location. This is just telling it where to get it so the installer can get it and compile it into its big executable. Okay, so you have some obviously required files here: OCX, ActiveX files, DLLs. The reason that we set override off right here is because sometimes these OCX files may be in use, and what we determined was they're pretty versioned. So you have msvcr71.dll. If that file exists, we don't need to worry about overwriting it. There's not going to be a better version of msvcr71, out there.
Fast, my battery's about to die.
That we know of. So that's why we use set override off. We're basically, in some cases, for some files, we want to just go, if the file exists, don't worry about it. It's there. We're good. Move on. You have synchro exe, all the required files. You can see here there's some so regjsm is the .NET registration for like the Bing Map DLL, for instance. And just more of the same files. Their file/r is copy the entire templates directory into the output folder. So you have the output path is set to the final directory, and then the template. And you can see some of this is redundant. Like we could actually remove that right there. There's a lot of cases where some files existed and we've removed them and changed them since the initial development. So there might be a few more of those, but basically all of these files here are going to the final dir. Now we go to the Windows directory. That's the System32 directory, or that's the Windows directory. So we're setting that out, putting that out there. We're putting our System32 DLLs. There's a few of them, that we put out there. We also set override off on that because many of those are going to be in use, and none of them are critical that Synchro uses to where we absolutely have to override them with the newer version, like codecs and stuff like that. And more of the same, and then we get down to where we're creating the shortcuts. Create directory, I think it's pretty obvious. This is set to the start menu programs, so we're creating the Trafficware start menu program entry and creating all the shortcuts, creating all of the registry keys needed. These are all of the Synchro INI is actually how Synchro how it pulls it doesn't store its information in INI. It just puts it right in the registry. It's actually a really bad place for it. You don't typically write right to the HKey current user root, but I just made this the way that the old installer did it. So while I would have preferred to change that, I just left it as it is. More registry keys. These are all things that Synchro needs. And after that, the uninstaller uninstaller functions begin with un. You can see here, the uninstaller has its own check fail synchro suite running. Of course, synchro can't be running during the uninstall process, so it has its own function. And then the uninstall, which is deleting all the links, deleting the user guides, and we are going to be working on that to where it's specifically, that's one of the changes that we currently have, to where it's specifically only deleting what it needs to delete. We're going to compare that to the old installer and make sure that's perfect, but that's the current state that it's in. And just some helpers, radio button. Remember the selection I was telling you about? That's another helper for that. And this is there's actually a little feature in here. When you're running Windows XP, you shouldn't have the option to install Windows 7. So before the components page is called, it runs this little block of code here that says if you're at most Windows XP. In other words, if the highest that you are is XP, then call abort, which is don't show the page. In other words, hard coded to where it selects the XP version and abort that page. So the user will actually never see that page if they're on XP. They don't have the option to install a Windows 7 database. That's it.
Awesome. Anything on like directory structure or anything like that, or not really?
There's nothing else to say. I mean, you know, the directory structure is simple. It's just
maybe cover any of the gotchas we've encountered. These other tickets, no, the tickets that we've had, and like, oh, we got to go and account for that, or anything.
There hasn't really been that many. I mean, really, the biggest challenge was getting the SQL tools to execute correctly, so that we have a very consistent. You know, one of the problems with the old installer was you know, the database sometimes. You know, we got that TIA problem, and I think it maybe wasn't so much a problem with the installer, but just simply that we're moving MDF files over, and Syncro can get out of sync sometimes. Those files might get corrupt, and it's not dealing with them on a SQL level, it's dealing with them on a file level. So we would have to like have these utilities that reset the database, you know, and stuff like that. So we're still, we also had some of those hurdles with the installer, you know, and getting that situation worked out. I think a lot of times we put into that to perfect that, but all in all, it's really easy to use, and it's just like there hasn't really been, you know, any huge you know, any major problems to speak of as far as it goes. It's just been a matter of a couple of things like that we run into were little incompatibilities between the old installer that, you know, Insys did a little bit different that we had to adjust, but nothing major. You know, for the most part, it's actually been pretty simple.
Cool. And Insys as a whole, like I remember you sent an email like all the companies that use it and how popular it is, or speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, well, Insys is, you know, it's open source. It's easy to use. It's obviously simple, and you know, you can develop it really. You can create installers really quickly. You know, and that's what I think its biggest strength is. The downside to Insys is that it's not fully automated, like with the latest version of Install Shield, for instance.
It's the paid.
It would have a lot of these
paid version,
right? You know, it would have a lot of these functions built in. It might have a function for checking, you know, for .NET version, for instance. That would have saved a little bit of time. But you know, if you're already comfortable in code, then that's a super easy thing to find the function that looks for the .NET version. Plug in there. It took me about 2 minutes. You know what I mean? So to me, that's not a challenge. To somebody who doesn't know how to code, that might be an issue. And I think that's what keeps people away from this. But this installer you see all over the place. You know, it's hugely used. You know, if you go to like the 5 most popular installers, you know, on Wikipedia, this is one of them. You know, it's just because of its simplicity and its ability to kind of just cater to programmers. It's just so easy to write. You know that it's you know, pretty important. It can be actually a lot easier than those tools that are dumbed down when you want to try to do something custom.
Cool.
You know, so
all right, thanks, man.
Pretty much it.